Aloha nerds. Welcome back to the Salawag's What's Great Gut Reaction. Here I watch things and react from the gut. Recently I have rewatched Men of Steel. And I don't want to go into it too much because I've also watched Talkville and some clips from Smallville and I want to talk about that as well. But first up, Men of Steel. Why am I talking about it? Well, you see, in the Conan video I did, I mostly talked about the main title sequence. In the Unbreakable video I did, I mostly talked about color story and how the colors change the story. This will be the fundamental source of what these podcasts will be. The point of my gut reactions is that they are not just emotional and do I like it. Of course, I have to like it to react to it. But the question is there something intellectual? Is there something to learn from the film? Now, with this terrible Alan Watts impression that was supposed to be a terrible Marlon Brando impression, I will attempt to go over something important about Man of Steel. But first, for those who have not seen Man of Steel, I will be spoiling the movie. So, go watch it. It's mostly pretty good. Questionable ending, questionable moments throughout the movie. The movie's biggest problem is not being perfect. It's pretty damn close to perfect, but it's not quite there. And so it's mostly just really good and then also kind of questionable. That is what the general emotional experience of that movie is. To be followed up by BVS, which is mostly looks really good, but makes lots of questionable choices. Anyway, we're not talking about that, or Justice League. We're just talking about Men of Steel, and the overall origin of Superman, and the importance of parts of his origin. So for those who don't know, Man of Steel follows Krypton during its destruction. We see Krypton in its final days, gripped with civil war. General Zod has raised up the sword against the Council of Elders who run Krypton, and he has decided they don't know what the fuck they are doing, and literally shoots them all to death. Good job, Zod. Good job. This is how you do a coup. This is how we do it here, and this is, of course, how they do it all around the galaxy. So, good job, Zod. Good job. Unfortunately, General Zod was not the only one who disagreed with the Council. Jor-El, Krypton's most renowned scientist, really did not agree with the Council's choice to mine the core of their planet for power and energy. He was like, that dumb. I'm a scientist, that dumb. And of course, the bosses in charge were like, we don't know what you're talking about. Even though it's your job to know what's smart, we don't know what you're talking about. And this is a running theme of the origin of Superman, that Jor-El was a scientist who predicted the end of Krypton, but the elders and people in charge, who don't know what the fuck they're talking about, decided, nah, it's fine. No, this is bad. Nah, it's fine. No. And then Krypton blows up and he's just like, I wish someone told me that it was going to blow up. I would have made different choices. You were warned. But anyway, knowing that the planet was going to die, Jor-El and his wife, Lara, formed a plan to send their baby across the ocean of stars in a little spaceship to Earth. And, well, usually that's the end of Krypton. Krypton's about to blow up, the ship goes into space, and that's the end of Krypton. It just blows up. But in this movie, General Zod finds out about the whole, sending the baby away. And not only that, but to make the plot a little more convoluted, Jor-El steals something from the Krypton archive, some kind of ancient skull, and then transmutes it into Clark Kent's, or Kal-El's, the little baby Kal-El. He transmutes it into his newborn baby's blood. What kind of shit is that? Is that going to have any negative effects down the line? Will he get lead poisoning? Is this the source of his powers? Is this why he's a little bit more powerful than the other Kryptonians? Or will he just have the knowledge of like a million different potential babies? Like what does this do? You know, it's like you're turning Kal-El into the one. He was already the one because he's the only one that leaves intentionally. But now he's got metal blood in his blood. Like literally, what is that about? Why? Why you do that? So General Zod invades while they were sending. Maybe if you weren't transmuting the little skull into your son's blood, your little newborn baby's blood, General Zod wouldn't have time to interrupt you. Because while they're sending the ship away, General Zod shows up. Focus your fire on the door! Like, where else are they gonna shoot? They don't know where the hell else to shoot. Focus the fire on the door! And they bust in and try to stop the whole goddamn thing. To which we get an awesome fight between Zod and Jor-El. And mind you, we got Russell Crowe playing Jor-El. And we have... Oh, my accent. Oh, shit. Whatever. And we got Michael Shannon playing Zod. Doing a great job. Both guys doing a great job. A pretty cool update from the Marlon Brando Terrence Stamp. I think if you're going to go that way, then that's cool. That's cool. And epic fight. It's really cool. We see the technology. Still a far cry from the animated series, I gotta say. But anyway, yeah, Zod interrupts, they fight, Zod kills Jor-El, but not before Jor-El leaves a horrible, scar on Zod's face. Just typical Lion King shit. And, yeah, and then, we see Zod and his gang, they do get corralled by the part of the military that's not working for him anymore, because they're like, that wasn't cool, bro. I mean, we served, the planet, not you, Yeah. And so he still gets arrested. So confusing arrangement of events that it's Zod going to jail, to Phantom Zone prison jail, just before the planet blows up. Very weird. Very weird. Just weird. And of course, then the planet blows up. Lots of beautiful visuals. This is Zack Snyder, the director. This beautiful visuals is what he do. And then, bam! We watch Kal-El's ship go to Earth. We don't see an immediate show of his growth of being discovered and all that stuff. What's cool about Man of Steel is that it just cuts to him being an adult, and he's traveling the world, and he's getting different jobs, and he's getting different experiences. But they do find a way to dovetail in his kind of goal of finding himself. So we when we come into it, we're coming into one of the reasons I'm talking about this. So one of the reasons I'm talking about Man of Steel is because the title is important. Titles in movies are huge indicators about what the movie's about. Your title is important. Nowadays, titles are barely even titles. Nowadays, we might as well just call them movie. There's a movie that's a joke movie that's called Movie 43, and I can't watch it. But at this point, titles are basically about to just start saying a movie. You know what I mean? Because the titles just have no connection, no deeper connect. The point of the title, and in many cases the point of the opening visual of most movies, if they're done by an experienced filmmaker, is to indicate something significant to pay attention to throughout the film. Now, Christopher Nolan, who had just finished the Dark Knight trilogy, was a producer overlooking huge aspects of this film. So he's coming into this having already done so many great, smart filmmaker things with the Dark Knight trilogy, amongst also his other works. And what I really appreciate is that if we go back to the Dark Knight itself, the Dark Knight had significance in its title. It wasn't just that that's a moniker for Batman. It's that throughout that movie, throughout The Dark Knight, there's the thread of Harvey Dent, district attorney. His marketing campaign is that he's the White Knight of Gotham City. Batman's running around breaking the law. Harvey Dent's going to do things the right way. So he is a reaction to Batman in the sense that, okay, this guy is really, he's going to such extreme lengths, somebody has to step up and do things the right way. And very much Harvey Dent's conflict with the other characters is that they're not doing things the right way. His first conflict is with James Gordon, the not yet commissioner at the start of the movie, where he's telling him, "Hey, look, you've got two people on your force who need to get pulled off. They're known corrupt people. I know that they're doing illegal stuff behind the scenes." To which Jim Gordon responds, "If I didn't work with people who had done illegal things behind the scenes, I would literally have no cops to work with." Because as we established in Batman Begins, every cop was corrupt. In fact, you were suspicious if you were not corrupt. And if you were not corrupt, you were just killed. And that was the rules of Gotham City at the time Batman was born. But so in The Dark Knight, they refer to Harvey Dent as two things. There is some name he's called, which is revealed later. But what they typically refer to him as is the White Knight, as the guy who's stepping in, because even that conflict with Gordon is still Dent trying to fight for the right thing, even with the people that he's working with. And even though he is a frustrating character for them to be around, which is similar to how he was, this one was based off of the Long Halloween, similar to how he was in that particular comic book run. But most importantly, it doesn't matter who he works with. He wants those people to do things right, or as right as possible, that allow him to legally do things with clean hands. But of course, the movie is about, plot-wise, the corruption of the White Knight. And because, spoiler alert if you haven't seen The Dark Knight yet, because that movie ends with Harvey Dent ultimately having his heart broken through the loss of his fiancée in a very brutal and vicious way. He goes down such a rabbit hole of darkness that ultimately the only hero left who's still doing the right thing is Batman. And it's Batman who rescues James Gordon and his family from Harvey Dent, who's gone on a revenge rampage. And it's wild, you know what I mean? But that is what motivates the title. So our title isn't just The Dark Knight because it's Batman, but it's James Gordon's final speech closing out the movie, that Batman has to run away because the cops have to chase him, because Batman needs to take the rap for Harvey Dent's crimes in order for Harvey Dent's good work to actually succeed. All the work they did, they had literally locked away all of the biggest criminals and all of their number two guys, and essentially cut off organized crime in Gotham City. So finally, regular society doesn't have to live in fear. People can go around in their own neighborhoods and not worry about being attacked or mugged or killed for some random reason. But all of that would go away if Harvey Dent was found out for the horrific crimes he'd committed. So Batman had to take the fall in order for the good work to actually succeed. And it's wild, it's really wild how that, just using the name the White Knight is Christopher Nolan's method of earning the Dark Knight title. That the Dark Knight is not just a cool name, it has a significant meaning. And this is very literary. Books do this. This all comes from books. Christopher Nolan, Guillermo del Toro, huge readers. And speaking of, again, movies and books having significant titles, The Silence of the Lambs, very important title. The Silence of the Lambs refers to a story told by the main character, Clarice Starling, to the second main character, Hannibal Lecter. in that movie, the premise is that Clarice Starling, an academy student trying to join the FBI, is enlisted to essentially ask Hannibal Lecter critical questions that will hopefully lead to the discovery of who is Buffalo Bill, a deranged murderer who's kidnapping women and skinning them. Hopefully, will lead to finding him and capturing him. And they believe their best method of doing that is through Hannibal Lecter because they think either Hannibal Lecter knows who the criminal is or at least would be able to give them significant information. Essentially, Hannibal Lecter is a therapist. He's dealt with a lot of extreme cases. So either his psychoanalysis will lead to better information or lead to the exact person that they're looking for. But Hannibal gives her a quid pro quo. If she wants information from him, then he's got to get information from her. And what he wants is her life story. He wants to know how her brain works. And one of the very first things he asks her is, what happened to you when you were young? Did anything significant happen? And she says that her father died and then she went to live with her uncle. And while on her uncle's farm, the uncle, part of his, while on her uncle's farm, and what Clarice tells him is that early in her life, her father died, and she went to live with her uncle. And it was her uncle who had a farm, and on that farm they slaughtered lambs. Sorry for doing that in a Ronald McDonald way a little bit. Kal-El, it is I, your father, Jor-El. You're not a native of planet Earth. You are, in fact, the last son of the planet Krypton. I, your father, and your mother made you the old-fashioned way, knocking some boots. We don't like clone babies. That is just gross. Unfortunately, I was supposed to tell you that you were sent away to Earth because planet Krypton was exploding. This was a lie. Truth be told, you were an ugly baby. You were such an ugly baby, you had to be sent away to Earth right away. The last thing we needed was the Council of Elders seeing an ugly baby, and then revoking our right to knock them boots. You better believe we had quite a journey to get the license to have babies the old-fashioned way. You see, on Krypton, you're not allowed to knock boots the old-fashioned way. You must have children through cloning. In fact, all intimate affairs are denied as part of keeping one's mind focused on the goal of Kryptonian success. So even sex could not be allowed. So you see, as scientists, and only as scientists, could we get the license to knock boots the old-fashioned way. And son, we just could not deny that license to ourselves. So we lied and told the other council that you died at childbirth, but the truth is you were an ugly fucking baby. You were one ugly fucking baby. But you know, you've grown up into such an adorable teenager. And since you grew up adorable, we are welcoming you back to the planet, son. We are so glad. And we are so sorry for sending Brainiac and many other future villains to kill you in your adolescent and teenager years. We are impressed by your survival skills and hope to include that in some of the entertaining things we have planned for you upon your return. So, that being said, sorry, just kidding. You are now a cute baby. We are reconfiguring our expectations on the looks of babies. Perhaps we judged too soon. And all of that is because of you, my son. So, thanks for being adorbs, and laters, yo. So Hannibal Lecter, in order to give information, offers Clarice Starling a quid pro quo. And he says that he will give her information on the case if she gives him information on herself. Essentially, he wants her life story. In a way, he wants to be a therapist again, but he really wants to know how her brain works and what matters to her, because this is his power. He likes to know how you work and then work you. And so Clarice tells her the story of that when she was younger, her father died, and she went to live with her uncle, who had a farm. And on that farm, they slaughtered lambs. And the very first night, she heard the screaming of the lambs. And she ran out to go rescue them, but they were so many, and they wouldn't actually run away. So she grabbed one and ran away with the lamb, hoping to save its life. Unfortunately, she was found, and the lamb was taken back into the slaughterhouse and killed. But that problem had always bothered her since she was a child. And so Hannibal Lecter immediately says, oh, so you're trying to rescue the lamb again. So again, this is what Hannibal's all about. He's all about figuring out what's going on with you and why you make choices. And so by the end of the movie, again, spoiler alert, I'm spoiling the end of this movie. If you haven't seen Silence of the Lambs, go watch it because it's freaking good. By the end of the movie, after Clarice has found the bad guy, killed him, and rescued the girl who's been kidnapped, that starts the whole movie in the first place. By the end of that movie, she gets a phone call from Hannibal Lecter, who has escaped jail. And his first thing that he asks her is, have the lambs stopped screaming, Clarice? And you get the sense that there is some resolution to her. She's finally saved someone, and perhaps she can get a good night rest, you know. But that is what the title means. The Silence of the Lambs isn't literally about lambs being silenced, because certainly if they were being killed, they were being silenced in some form. But the Silence of the Lambs refers to Clarice getting her resolution, getting her saved, being the hero. And so the title is very important when you look at anything. Movie, book, toy, action figure, whatever, I don't know. So the title is very important. The title you pick for your film or story is very important. Christopher Nolan understood that. Jonathan Demme understood that, the director of Silence of the Lambs. And here in Man of Steel, that thread is continued. And what I like about it is that it's unspoken. Man of Steel is never said in the movie. They go one step further than The Dark Knight by not stating it at all, but simply by showing it. And so now I'm going to go through certain scenes that I really responded to and really liked, and tell you about how I feel that they make Man of Steel a very strong entry as a film, and make it a bit better as a movie, even though, as I said, the movie makes some choices that I think are strange. I don't think that they kind of hold the movie back from its true potential, but you know, whatever. It's still got great stuff in it, and that's what I want to celebrate today. So our very first scene with Clark Kent on Earth, Kal-El on Earth. He's working a boat in the middle of the ocean that's thrashing around, and this I don't know if you've seen any of those shows about like the boat guys who go out and catch fish, Bering Sea, or whatever the heck it is, whatever the heck it's called. But he's on one of those boats, and this crate is hanging over him, and it falls, and somebody leaps and knocks him out of the way and saves him. And it's not a comforting, like, are you okay, man? It's like, hey, you stupid, or you look around, what's going on, man? You know, the guy is angry that he had to save Clark, but Clark is like relieved, like, this guy just saved my life, and he doesn't know that he didn't need to. But the fact is that it starts out with a basic example of a human being saving another human being for no other reason than your life matters. And that's important. It's an unstated thing that happens in life all the time that we take for granted, but it happens, and Superman is saved by someone else. And in fact, this is really Kal-El being saved twice, because first he was saved by his parents, who sent him away from the planet that was about to blow up. And the second person to save him was just some guy that he worked with, who he barely even knew. So Superman is getting rescued in this movie as well. But I think this is what I would call the first moment of a Man of Steel. This meaning will become clearer as I cite more scenes, but right there, here's somebody else stepping in to do the right thing, is what I'm defining as what the Man of Steel is supposed to be, what Superman is supposed to be. Somebody else stepped in. A human, an earthling, set the example for our hero, who was not from Earth, but was raised on Earth. So Superman does end up saving an oil rig after this in a pretty cool sequence where we get to see Beefcakes holding up a tower as before it can fall and hit a rescue helicopter. Beefcakes. I watched the Honest trailer for this as well. And that's a Superman moment. But what makes this a movie worthy of the title Man of Steel? One of the following scenes, once Superman gets back on land, he sees a school bus and has a flashback of being a kid, and he's being picked on by this bully, and there's some kind of accident happens, and the bus careens off this bridge and goes into this lake, and young middle school, high school Clark Kent pushes the bus back onto land, saving all the kids, but the bully is not in the bus. The bully's still in the water, so he jumps back into the water and pulls out the bully and saves his life. Now, here's a situation where Clark could have been petty, let the bully die for beating him up, but that wasn't in his character. And it would not necessarily have been the right thing to do. It would have been a very personal thing. It would be a very self-righteous thing to do, but it wouldn't have been the right thing to do. And that comes from Jonathan Kent. I'm going to talk about Smallville soon. But that, doing the right thing because it's the right thing, is a significant aspect to the Superman character. That he wants to do things the right way. Even the fact that his disguise involves Superman's disguise, as the speech from Kill Bill Volume 2 delivered excellently by David Carradine, written by Tarantino. His disguise is actually his native identity to himself. He was raised as Clark Kent from Smallville. But once he knows he's Kal-El from Krypton, he then recreates his native known identity as an alter ego, because he knows who he truly is. But also, it is who he is, Clark Kent. But the glasses become this thing that he needs in order to hide his real face. But his real face in the Superman suit, that's who he truly is. So that is him being rightfully, truly himself. Using his powers. But, as a guy dressed in a normal outfit, that's not what he does. But he's also keeping this secret about himself because that's what his parents have asked him to do. But because he can have the power in these horrible, tragic scenarios, because he has the power, he uses it to rescue people. And it's just this natural instinct that comes out of him. And this leads us to a conversation with Jonathan Kent, played in this movie by Kevin Costner. Where in this movie, Kevin Costner says, maybe you should have let them die. Because the fear is that, as the parents have, is that once people find out you have powers, the government's not going to let us keep you. They're going to come pick you up and do tests on you. And it's going to be messed up and unfair to you. And we will lose our son. Our adopted, but our son. And that's very much the conflict between young Clark Kent and his parents. And I think Smallville delineates this perfectly. I'll get into that a little bit more later. But for Man of Steel, it's a morally gray statement, but that has its own virtue hidden within it, which is that please don't expose yourself. Terrible things will happen if people find out what you can do. Terrible, unfortunate things will happen if people find out what you can do. Don't expose yourself. Also good for just in general people, don't expose yourself in public. It's not okay. Just because I've been shirtless in a couple podcasts does not mean you should expose yourself in public. Okay? Do as I say, not as I do, man. But anyway, so we're getting the conflict of what this person should be as he grows up, right? That's kind of what's going on here. But then we come back to him, and then now we come back to adult Clark Kent, who's just still wandering, getting different jobs. And he is a bartender now. Or no, he's not a bartender. He's a waiter in a bar. And he sees this truck driver, being handsy and being creepy with his waitress, his coworker. And she handles herself well enough, but he's being way too aggressive, and so Clark goes over and says, "I think you need to leave." And this guy just, what? Just what? What, you want to fight me? And he stands up, and he's this little guy. Not that he's like little. I'm not trying to say anything offensive here. Peace, love everybody. But, he's shorter than Clark, and when he stands up, literally standing up for him, looking head on, is Clark Kent's nipples, okay? He's got Batman and Robin on either side if he stands up and just looks straight on. And he's looking up to Clark Kent saying, "What? You want to start something, man?" And he tries to check him and bounces off of him. And he tries to play it off like he did that on purpose, but he didn't. And then he pours his drink on Clark's head. And you could see Clark feels it and don't like it. It does not feel good. And it's kind of humiliating. But he still stands his ground. And it's the waitress who says, "It's okay. Just let it go." Which again, the human being willing to take the hit because she doesn't want to see someone else suffer. Now this is sort of an important thread amongst these human scenes, is that Clark Kent knows he has the power to crush these people and do whatever he wants. But it takes all of his strength, his real strength, not to do that. And even the girl is saying, don't do it. Well, she's saying don't get hurt. But also she doesn't want him to fight this guy for her. She's willing to just deal with this because this is something she has to deal with. And not that it makes it right, but it's also telling us this is kind of our first Man of Steel from Superman's point of view. Like, what makes him a Man of Steel doing the right thing is that he listens. And he does not act the way this little asshole acts. And it's kind of telling you as an audience, like, when you see this in public, this is not a correct way to behave. That Superman doesn't just step in because a cat is in a tree. He steps in to do the right thing when things are not right, when things are not appropriate. That's what being a man, just the man part, that's what being a man is from his point of view. That being a man isn't acting tough and trying to showcase yourself, and make a big show of yourself and show how strong you must be. Because ultimately, to everyone, you just look like a wimp who needs to show off. But being a man is being strong in a situation like this and just face it, Sometimes it's better to get involved and sometimes it's not. But in this case, he felt, hey, I'm going to go deal with this because I can. And, but, again, the girl says, don't bother. And he doesn't. He listens to her. He gets out of there. As he's walking out, little dude chucks a metal can at him, and it bounces off of his back. And Clark does not react at all because, of course, why would he? He has probably barely even felt it. Probably felt like a little poke. And someone in the distance, and I think it was one of the guy's friends, because he's talking to some friends when he's messing with the waitress. Somebody says in the background, he's got like a back of steel. Like, you know what I mean? Because what they threw at him, what the dude threw at him, definitely looked like it was heavy, and probably would at least had some reaction if it was thrown at a normal person. But that, very, very important scene. I think this movie is setting very clear morals and standards for what should be decent public behavior from the point of view of Superman. Superman would never think this is okay. But here he is, not fully fleshed out yet as a person, and not fully confident in himself yet, but still trying to confront an issue while not utterly killing someone with any of his fucking powers. Which is then followed by the truck driver leaving the bar, and his car and his truck is completely smashed in with multiple wood logs with multiple power lines. How many people lost power so that Clark could lose his temper on the dude's truck? I don't know. This is not, I think, a very good Man of Steel scene. I think it's actually a very bad Man of Steel scene, because it still goes to him using his powers in a destructive way. Now this guy can't get home, so he has more time to spend with the waitress. So that was not a very good call. But also, little criticism here, I think this was a missed opportunity. Missed opportunities with the Salawag, a podcast within a podcast. I think this could have been a great opportunity to do a Dark Knight callback. I think since you're doing the whole title has meaning thing, this would have been a fantastic moment to just have the truck flipped upside down. I think if it was flipped upside down, it would give you a great sense of how strong Clark Kent is. And it could have had a little bit of roughage going on, but if the truck was just flipped upside down, and the guy came out and walked, and the camera just kind of pulled back, and then you saw him. If the guy came out of the bar with his friends, and it was just like, and he walked up, and the camera backed up on his reaction, and we see this full trailer flipped upside down, I think that would have been a much better indicator of how powerful Superman is, and how much control he has over his powers as well. Because once you show this truck smashed in with so many different, like, power line wooden logs, it's just kind of like, okay, somebody somewhere does not have power in their home, Superman. That's not cool. And this, I don't think his truck deserved that. It's not like the truck belongs to him. He still has to return it to the company, most likely. But it would have been much cuter and more clever if the truck had been flipped. And again, you would get a Dark Knight reference, so that the audience gets a little, ha-ha, they did the thing. But then, no, CGI truck that's ridiculously destroyed. Like, wow. Well, I can see you're hinting at destruction to come. But I digest. So, okay, so now we've been through a couple scenes that kind of establish the Man of Steel theme going on here, and the second one literally says back of steel. So, the theme is kind of coming out here. One thing I gotta say I really liked. Wait, what was my next example? I kind of forgot my next example. What I like in a following flashback is that we cut back to Clark a little bit older than he was when he saved the bully. And now two new bullies are shoving Clark around. and Clark is resisting the urge to just cripple them. But once the two bullies walk away, the original bully that he saved comes up and offers his hand and helps pick him up. And I thought that was a really touching little moment. I'm glad they left in the movie because it shows the power, the real power of doing good for goodness sake. So here you had one bully who was doing this for whatever reason he was doing it. And his mind and his heart were changed forever because of that incident. That this kid that I was just picking on just saved my life and he didn't have to. He did not have to do that. And that changed him and made him become a better person. And that's not going to happen for everyone you save, but the fact that it happened for one is critical. It's the power of doing something good in this world, is that you don't know who you're going to turn around because of one good deed. Now, in the case of Silence of the Lambs, that lady helped an old man suspiciously moving just a couch in the middle of the night. Okay, no, don't do that. And this is why you don't do that. Sometimes doing a good deed is not always a good idea. Come back with your 6 buff guy friends who can help him lift that thing. And when he tries to hit you in the head, they can all fucking tackle the dude. And oh my god, don't do American History X. Anyway, but this is the reason why. There's a reason why we do good things. It's because we save people, because there's that glimmer of hope that even if they were a bad person before they were saved, they still have the chance to be a good person after being saved. They still have a chance to make their life happen. And even if they weren't, if they're living a good life, they let them continue living a good life. Now, the movie comes under a lot of criticism because once Zod shows up and starts nuking the place, Superman does not save that many people because they get destroyed by the Kryptonian weapons that Zod brings back with him and his little cronies. But one thing I appreciate about the ending, because we're just skipping to the ending here, there's a really fantastic scene. Lawrence Fishburne is in this movie as Perry White, and I like his little conflicts with Lois Lane because he's really trying to do his job. You know what I mean? He's trying to do his job and saying, what you're reporting on cannot be corroborated. There's no proof. We can't put this out. And that's fine. That's good. That's good stuff. That the fact that he has a strength of character to what he's saying, that he's really trying to do the right thing in terms of his job function. What's great is later on, she puts out the story anyway, and he's like, I thought you said you were going to drop the story. You agreed to drop the story. And then she says, I just did. I'm dropping it now. I'm sorry. And he relaxes and says, good. Because can you imagine how the world would react to find out someone like this existed? And yes, Batman v Superman, all of the best parts of that movie are the world's reactions. Just the complicated podcasts and news interviews and all the negative and the positive reactions, I thought. That very beautifully handled. But the fear in his voice, like he's really, like the world at this time is not ready for this guy to pop up. The very same concerns that Jonathan Kent had earlier. Like, the world might not react very well to this. This could really be bad, or this could really turn out in a way that we're not ready for. To find out someone like this exists. But, again, we're talking about strength of character here. What I like is, in the end, when Zod's blowing the place up, there's a moment where the intern, Jenny, is trapped under some rubble and under a massive chunk of concrete. And Lawrence Fishburne and another guy I'm sorry for not knowing his name off the top of my head because he's a really fantastic actor. He does great work in that show with Kevin Spacey, whatever the frick. He does great work in House of Cards. But in this particular scene, you know, Lawrence wants to run, but he doesn't. He stops. And he comes back and he tries to save her. And his, one of his reporter guys, the guy from House of Cards, is there with him and isn't willing to leave either. And they're trying to get the concrete up. The destruction is getting closer and closer and closer to them, to the point where Jenny says, just leave. It's okay, just leave. And Lawrence Fishburne does not. Instead, he just reaches out his hand, and they hold hands as the destruction is about to wipe them out. And that, I thought, is a genuine Man of Steel moment, because in all of the scenes with Clark Kent, we're not worried about Clark Kent because we know he's invincible. But also, in all of those scenes was a human character who was willing to take, a mortal threat or some form of personal offense, willing to just take it because they could, or because that's just what they had to do or felt they had to do. And here in this final moment of this battle, Lawrence Fishburne is just willing to sit there and make sure that this woman didn't die alone, that she died with someone that cared about her and was trying to rescue her, and could just have that as her last moment. And I thought that was so emotionally powerful. Now, people, again, they get upset because Superman isn't directly saving people in this scene, but he is. He's fighting a giant mechanical monster in order to shut down the machine so it stops killing people. And what's beautiful is in that same moment when Lawrence Fishburne and Jenny are holding hands, and the other guy, he didn't leave either, but he didn't leave because of Lawrence Fishburne. Because Lawrence Fishburne stayed there, that example changed the other guy. The other guy totally wanted to run, but Lawrence Fishburne setting the example made the other guy change. And it was in that moment, in the moment of the human not losing humanity, that Superman got the strength to stand up and defeat the machine. And so the Man of Steel is not just Superman, but it is about humanity. It's about the Man of Steel nature of man and woman. Because we already see Clark Kent face these scenarios with people where they're willing to take the hit. They're willing to do the thing that needs to be done. And it's that example that lives in his blood as well, that shapes him as Superman. And so when Superman stands up against enemies with far greater power, he is representing to the whole world what the world represents to him. Again, that Lawrence Fishburne scene is everything. I think without the Lawrence Fishburne scene, Man of Steel as a title holds no water. But to me, just my reaction to it, my experience of it, Man of Steel is about that moment. It's not about you being so strong that nothing can hurt you. It's about you could get hurt, but you're willing to do what matters most anyway, because you have to, or just because it's right. And that those things can be a blurry, gray, questionable line, but it's addressed in this movie. And I really appreciated Snyder and Goyer and the entire team for being willing to have these small scenes that don't appear to be that significant in the greater scope of things. But if you're watching the movie and you're paying attention, they are what the title's about. And so, again, what I was talking about before about the disguise. The movie builds up to him being in his suit, and then he's pretty much in his suit for the rest of that chunk of the movie until the ending. After he's already saved the world, and everyone is relaxed. And actually, he saved, by destroying the machine, he saved Lawrence Fishburne and saved Jenny at the same time. Neither one of them had to die because he stopped the machine. And so we got to have a beautiful moment, and he did rescue people, just not directly with his bare hands, but he did. He did save them. So I think Man of Steel, with scenes and moments like that, very powerful stuff of note. I think the original Superman the movie, the first hour is full of things like that. They're even subtler, and they're less direct because they're trying to bang through a lot of story. But I appreciate that Man of Steel, those scenes I feel like should have been in the second half of Superman the movie, because Superman the movie in its second half becomes a kind of goof fest where we have silly villains and silly villain subplots, and it's meant to be humorous and funny, but it does not age well. Even though the acting's great, it does not age well. It really comes off as the odd humor of the 70s. They had some funny humor, you know. But these types of conflicts would have definitely made the second half of that movie live a much stronger life. But they're here in Man of Steel. I think Superman the movie and Man of Steel both are almost two halves of a really great film. You know, Superman the movie does work as a movie still as a whole, and Man of Steel still works as a movie as a whole. But I say both of them have these dips away from the main focus and the main arcs that kind of take away from the longevity of the pictures as a whole, even if they do stand as a whole well enough. But I think for both movies, it's kind of a well enough kind of scenario. I think the conflicts showcased in Man of Steel come out a bit in Superman 2. That's the cool thing about Man of Steel, is that it is a literal squishing of Superman the movie and Superman 2. Because without a Lex Luthor. Because essentially Superman 2 is about Zod and his cronies showing up to Earth and causing destruction, and Superman having to stand up against them. But what's great about Man of Steel is that in the original Superman the movie, it's Marlon Brando's speech that is, the writing is so good. But essentially Marlon Brando's speech is that you will be you have the ability to be a light, to show the way, to show people how they should behave, how they should be. You know, Earth does not have to end up the way Krypton did. That even the message of both Man of Steel and Superman the movie goes back to that comic book, where again Jor-El knew what was going to happen, and people didn't listen. And initially, the old ideal was that the future would be so great and so utopian that people were just so lazy they didn't want to believe things could go bad. And that's still coming true. What's messed up about Man of Steel is that it's very much a reflection of our current reality, is that, hey, we are in the future and we're still at war with each other. We're still taking each other out all the time. And the opening of Krypton reflects that even in the way future, where technology should make us live in some kind of utopia, we're still bitterly fighting each other for no good reason. But every single person making a choice in a crucial moment can shift the way things go. And essentially that's what Man of Steel, I think, does even better than Superman the movie, by having all these scenes of character where the character must make a critical choice, and they make the best choice possible, or they make the choice that is what can be seen as morally right, and they by example, lead by example. You know, that's what a Man of Steel should do. You lead by example, by doing the right thing because it's right, and for no other reason. That's what superheroes are all about, that you do the right thing because it's right and for no other reason. No ulterior motive, no personal gain. You know, that's what the frickin' Power Rangers are about. That's literally their motto. But that's what Superman represents. And he, being the first superhero, he sets the example. But he sets the example only because it was set for him by the people that he just happened to come across throughout his life. You know, Smallville goes so far as to say that the Kents were pre-planned to be in his life. I think that's a bit much, and takes away the power of humanity. But what I love about the movies is that they say, this was chance. You could have ended up in anyone else's backyard, but you landed in the correct family's house. The family that had the right values. They weren't hardcore Christians. They weren't hardcore anything. They were just very nice, normal people who like to live a normal, quaint little life, but they just happened to have very strong morals. They might have been religious, but they had very strong morals that they kept to. And they accepted people regardless of their differences. They just happened to be like that. That was their way. And Superman learned that way. And across his life as Clark Kent, kept meeting people who did the right thing in difficult situations. And even if they were mad about it, even if they were suffering, they did the right thing because it was the right thing as they saw it at the time. And that is what being a Man of Steel is about. Not about strength, not about invincibility. Even Superman is vulnerable to the Kryptonian weapons he fights at the end of the movie, which helps make that point. Because if he had just been invincible, then you would just be copying Superman the movie, because that's how that movie ends. And I think what I really appreciate about Man of Steel is when we get to that ending. What I didn't appreciate it at the time, because at the time I wanted this, right? At the time I was like, that's the ending of the movie. But no, we got that at the end of Justice League instead. I like that him being a man, you know, finding his confidence in himself, it takes all of the trials that he goes through in Man of Steel. And then finally by the end, being a man is, he puts his clothes on, he goes to work, and he meets a girl. And unbeknownst to everybody else, they already met, so they already got something going on. But then I think that does strengthen Lois Lane's character a bit, that she actually knows ahead of time and is just pretending not to know to keep his secret. Because how could you be saved by this guy 600 times and see his face this close and not recognize that, oh, now that you don't have glasses, you're a different guy. You know, that it's beautiful that they did that. But also, hey, this movie is saying it's the man is the most important part. The steel is the morality. Now, again, going back to Conan, the power of steel, right? But in this case, the humanity is the steel. And the man is what he becomes by the end of the movie. When he's no longer lost in who am I, you know, what do I do with myself? He finally gets himself a stable job and meets a nice girl. And that's manhood. Now you're a man. Now get out there and go fight some giant monster who exists for no frickin' reason in the sequel. God damn it. I don't know if I'm doing BVS, but I got some beef with that movie. And it's all said in honest trailers, so I don't really have anything else to say. But Man of Steel, those were my 2 cents. Thank you for watching. And I'll talk about Smallville and all that stuff in another video. Because I do think that's some juicy stuff to talk about. But I just really wanted to throw some love to Man of Steel. Because it deserves it. It deserves it for having these themes and values embedded and not stated. And that is the power of film, and that is the power of good writing. Even if I still think the finished movie is just got some little, if they didn't do this and that, blah, 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 whatever. I still love that they did these things. I think it's the example that people need as they try to navigate their lives and figure out what's right and wrong for themselves. Because I've certainly been inspired by superheroes. And occasionally, I'm a halfway decent human being. Yeah, every now and then. Once a year. I'm not a total douchebag. Yeah, once a year. Maybe it's just when I watch Man of Steel. I don't know. It's cool. But anyway, thank you for watching. And remember, don't like, don't subscribe, and don't comment. And aloha.